I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, How Westinghouse Leveraged SuccessFactors LMS to Optimize Learning for the Global Workforce. We'll provide an overview of the LMS module and go into detail as how Westinghouse implemented the LMS, the benefits derived, and some key lessons learned along the way. We'll have a Q&A portion at the end, so please type any questions you may have into the questions box, or you can save them until the end. As I mentioned, my name is Paul Struck. Currently, I serve as an industry principal and SAP practice director with Yash Technologies. I've been working with SAP for about 20 years. Over the past 2 years, I've gotten involved with HCM and SuccessFactors implementations and have worked closely with Westinghouse in their overall SuccessFactors global deployment. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to Amy Belts, who is our key speaker from Westinghouse. She was the LMS team lead for the Westinghouse implementation and has a number of years of HRIM experience. Amy, why don't you go ahead and say hello?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining the webinar today.
In addition, we have Raj Jogan with us. He's a senior solution architect and was Amy's counterpart on the LMS team. Raj is a certified LMS expert and has about 15 years of HCM and SuccessFactors experience. Raj, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar.
Before we jump into the presentation itself, we wanted to provide some macro-level information and trends related to learning management. Historically, the primary role of a learning management system was to reduce the cost of training and training administration, improve compliance, provide a platform to improve employee skills, as well as to standardize processes and content. Organizations are now extending these core drivers to address business execution and performance by aligning business goals and skills requirements with learning and development. In fact, what we see today are organizations which have strong learning cultures significantly outperform their peers. Here, you'll see some key metrics identified in a recent survey by Burstead and Associates, which highlight some of these critical areas, whether it be innovation, productivity, and even profitability. To keep pace with marketplace realities, growth-minded organizations need to achieve sustainable business growth and be able to run at the right speed, in the right direction, in order to win. There are a number of macroeconomic and broader marketplace trends which play out across most organizations. Some of these are changing workforce demographics, consumerization of technology, as well as growth through talent intelligence. I just wanted to highlight a couple key points here. 60% of the share of India, South Asian nations, and Africa are now part of the global labor force growth. 90% of executives were surveyed whose companies use social media technologies report measurable business benefits through the use of these technologies. Another key trend is regulatory compliance and the cost associated with compliance, which impacts the business environment. Companies around the world say regulation and compliance will be the #1 risk through 2014, according to a survey from Ernst & Young. In fact, this risk has topped the E&Y study in 4 of the last 5 years. Interestingly, only 60% of the firms surveyed said they had implemented measures to address these risks. The main driver for new compliance rules come directly from regulatory bodies such as OSHA, Department of Transportation, FERC, as well as state and local regulators. So some of the key risks here are, do employees have the right certifications to do a job? Are they up to date with the industry standards or company compliance standards? And equally as important, can we properly report on the training completion and certification to these regulatory bodies? Some of the costs involved here are having to manage multiple learning systems and finding a path to a unified talent management solution. The next slide here shows some key facts on learning spend. In 2012, globally, there was $164 billion spent on employee learning, which averages out to about $1,100 US per employee. You see that almost 3% of all trainings was delivered using some form of technology, whether that be online or web-based training. And from an expense distribution perspective, 40% of employee learning spend was external to organizations. Next chart here just shows year-over-year change in training spend in the United States. U.S. spending on corporate training grew by 15% last year, the highest growth rate in the last 7 years, to over $70 billion. You'll see that the trough in 2008 and 2009 when learning budgets were slashed due to economic conditions, and it just highlights the fact that learning budgets are becoming more and getting back to more normalized amounts. Research tells us that organizations suffer from a skills supply chain challenge. Not only more than 70% of organizations cite capability gaps as one of their top 5 challenges, but many companies also tell us that it takes 3 to 5 years to take a seasoned professional and make them really productive. So that just highlights some of the key trends and facts that we see around learning management. Now I'd like to talk quickly about some of the key capabilities around SuccessFactors learning itself. SuccessFactors has the most comprehensive, innovative learning solution available today. Some of the key capabilities of learning include the concept of action from anywhere, which refers actually to a couple of things. One, the integration of learning with the other SuccessFactors modules, including employee profile, performance and goals management, as well as succession planning. SuccessFactors learning supports all learning modes, whether they be formal, informal, social, as well as blended. I'm going to talk a little bit about those each in the following slides. The main section around learning management itself, it provides the ability to capture ratings and recommendations to promote continuous learning. It captures exams and assessments, and it also is key around e-learning and instructor-led training. It also has the ability for extended enterprise with e-commerce. I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. And the other key aspect around functionality is mobile learning via the SuccessFactors mobile platform, which allows access to learning via mobile devices for learning on-the-go environment. And this includes any available platform, whether it be iPhone, Android, BlackBerry. It's also agnostic of device itself, so it could be a smartphone, tablet, a handheld. Another key aspect of SuccessFactors Learning is the learning metrics and analytics tool, which provide key dashboards and reports to identify learning ROI and business benefits, which support all 4 levels of the Kirkpatrick evaluation model. These 4 levels essentially measure, 1, the reaction of the student, what they thought and felt about the training; 2, learning itself, the resulting increase in knowledge and capability; 3, the behavior, the extent of behavior and improvement; and 4, results, the actual effects on the business or environment resulting from the training performance. A couple other areas that I want to touch upon around the social learning via SAP JAM, which is a powerful tool. It's not just specific to learning, but is used throughout all the different modules within SuccessFactors as well as SAP. And then the idea or the concept for iContent, which is a content as a service tool, which is seamlessly integrated to LMS. We'll talk about that as well. So the informal learning through SAP JAM. SAP JAM, which used to be called SuccessFactors JAM until SAP co-opted the name, is really a social collaboration tool which provides the ability for social learning. In addition, it allows organizations to create communities for end users in order to be able to share knowledge, share learnings, as well as best practices in order to drive engagement. It allows end users to informally search for learning across different modes and channels, and also because of the SuccessFactors mobile platform, it's also available via mobile for learning on the go. So here is where end users get together, create groups, create communities, and they're able to share information in bite-sized chunks. This is where end users can create 2 to 5 minute videos and post them out there for their peers and colleagues to be able to see specific things and help share information. It also has the ability to create what they call structured collaboration, where end users and people get together to actually help solve problems and talk about issues within their areas of competency. Blended learning, as we mentioned before, is seen really as the sweet spot for accelerating performance and increasing learning ROI. This chart highlights a spectrum of from informal learning to formal learning. And from formal learning perspective, include structured programs and courses with defined learning objectives. Examples include classroom-led training with assessments and exams. To the other end of the spectrum, you have the informal learning, which has two predominant types, self-directed and social learning or collaborative. Examples of that include working with peers and colleagues in SMEs. Another example would be creating communities of practice, quality councils, wikis, blogs, things like that. SuccessFactors Learning combines these different forms of learning. It enables a more effective, high-impact blended learning experience with the social complements the formal learning process. And this really is across, in the middle there, you'll see examples of where blended learning really helps improve the overall areas around process training and certifications, providing standards of service and support, any individual or group goal attainment. So blended learning is really seen as the highest impact way to deliver corporate training for mission-critical business initiatives. Another area which I mentioned was around e-commerce and for external learners. This provides the ability to uniquely brand learning sites, provide themes for learning. You can easily assign different learning catalogs for different audiences. We talked about JAM, the ability to create fast action videos and post them out there. And from an e-commerce perspective, the capability and functionality of being able to use multi-currency and multi-payment support. When we talk about things about chargebacks to cost centers and cost elements, you can do that with multi-currency given the global nature of SuccessFactors itself. The other key area that we wanted to focus on was the role of iContent at SuccessFactors. SuccessFactors is content agnostic. It has the ability to use whatever content a client has available, whether it be self-developed, purchased from a third party, as well as informal in nature, the SAP JAM collaboration that I mentioned. iContent is a CaaS-based solution. CaaS is an acronym for Content as a Service, which provides the ability to completely support the learning organization's content needs. SuccessFactors actually works with content providers and industry standard boards such as SCORM and AICC to ensure content is compliant. iContent provides content hosting, content testing and validation, update assurance, as well as security and course entitlement. With iContent, you have the ability to either leverage the premium service or the state uses the content hosting, which is an infrastructure backed by Akamai's global content distribution network. The premium service offers the testing and validation in order for end users to be able to launch and play and track their training wherever they see fit. It also provides update assurance. So iContent deploys all content updates and ensures the content is in the correct catalog for users. So as an example, if an organization is purchasing some e-learning content from a third-party provider, there's usually updates, whether it be monthly or the update assurance functionality ensures that those latest updates are finding their way back to that course content and those course catalogs accordingly. And then last but not least, the security and course entitlement functionality, which ensures that courses are only accessible by the authorized end users. And this is really critical when you have a multi-regional, multi-level organization. You want to ensure that the right resources are only looking at the right content and catalogs for their training purposes. So iContent works directly with SuccessFactors Learning Management to ensure that your course content and curriculums are being delivered to the right people, anytime, any place, anywhere. So to highlight some of the key aspects or takeaway on what SuccessFactors Learning provides, let me summarize as follows. The ability to deliver training content and curriculum for anyone, anytime, anywhere, including mobile learning on the go. The ability for a blended learning environment to be able to leverage both formal and informal training. Robust reporting and analytics tool for reporting on learning ROI and business results. And then obviously iContent, which provides a single centralized repository for secure training content and delivery. So at this point, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Amy Bells so she can tell you how Westinghouse implemented LMS for the global workforce. Amy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Paul. When Westinghouse started this journey of looking at SuccessFactors about a year and a half ago, the first thing we had to do is write a very strong business case. We were facing many of the challenges and pressures that Paul had talked about a little bit earlier in the research with the growing global workforce, the export control information. And so we sat down and looked at all the different things that were impacting what was going on. We had just implemented a learning management system about 4 years ago, and that was the SAP LSO. The one thing that we found out that really kicked us off is the technical support was ending for our current learning management system in 2020. Because it was a on-premise, we relied heavily on SAP for the technical support, and we're always looking for the upgrades to grow with the workforce as well and the enhancements, and that was no longer going to be there. So the technical support was ending. The other piece of it was that we needed access for contingent workers. Westinghouse is building power plants around the world. Currently we're in China and the United States, and they're looking at other areas. And the individuals that are building those plants are typically contingent workers. We have Westinghouse employees there to manage the projects, but the contractors are not Westinghouse employees. They need access to so that they can be in compliance with our policies and procedures for building the plan. Another one is self-service for managers. One of the things we were doing is looking to streamline training assignments and reporting. In the past, we had an Excel macro, and there were 2 different reports that were pulled out of SAP. They were pulled into this macro, and then the data was output into a separate Excel file, which was a training matrix the managers had to manually put together and update. Anytime an employee in a group changed, they manually had to add them. Anytime a training came out that they needed, they had to manually add it or remove it. And it was a very, very time-consuming process across the organization. The last piece of it that really solidified the business case was to standardize processes globally. When we started looking at learning management across Westinghouse, what we found is there were about 6 different what we would call learning management systems per se. Some were used just for qualifications. Some of them were homegrown. We were paying fees for multiple ones that were external. And it was all because the one corporate learning management system didn't meet the needs of the global organization. So with that, we decided it was time for a new learning management system. So we had to scope out the project and figure out what we were looking at with upgrading. We had, excuse me, we had about 25,000 users, and that included employees and what we call internal contingent workers. They were ones that had already had access to our learning management system because they sat at site and they were on our network. With that 25,000, we had about 1 million learning records that had to come over, whether it was a qualification record or a course completion record, whatever it might be. So over 1 million records that we had to plan for. There were 20,000 plus different courses or qualifications that had to come over. Some were active, some were inactive, but we wanted everything all in one place. I mentioned content earlier, and that was a huge part of the project, was looking at how do we get the content from our internal server to the SuccessFactors server. Approximately 600 of our courses were all web-based courses, which had a content file that had to be moved. Another piece of the technical portion was chargeback. The way that Westinghouse operates is we get a very small allocation to fund salaries for our learning and development group, but any type of courses comes from the business by charging a small fee for the courses that we offer. And in order to do that, there was a process in SAP where once somebody attended a course, we were able to charge their cost center, and we needed to maintain that process moving forward. That was not changing. And the last piece was, how do we integrate with Skillsoft? We spent a lot of time about 2 years ago being able to set Skillsoft up so that our employees could launch the courses directly from our learning management system. We were very committed to not having them go out to the Skillsoft learning management system and take the courses there for a few reasons. We wanted the seamlessness of the system that they were using to access training, and we also wanted to ensure that all of the training history was in one place. So we had to look at that piece. With that, we were ready to implement. We went through the project, and there were some big decisions and some big wins that came out of it that really made it a success. The first one is the ease of assignment reporting. Now we have more streamlined reporting because we're using what you call curriculum, and we'll look at that when we get the system piece of it, but we're using curriculum to gather training together in a bucket and assign it to individual users. By doing that, we can then run reports on those curriculum to see who's complete on the curriculum and what training our employees still need to take. That was one of the biggest wins that replaced the old training matrices that were done manually. We also have the ease of assigning training. By using the curriculum, we can assign training to an individual or a group of individuals. Right now we have an all Westinghouse employee curriculum, and that's assigned to all employees at Westinghouse. Anytime training requirements change across Westinghouse, all we have to do is change what's in that curriculum, and it automatically gets assigned to all of the employees in SuccessFactors. And the managers are also able to create curricula and assign that to their employees. So if there's group-specific training, when a new hire started in the past, they didn't really know what they had to take. Now they know because the manager has this curriculum created, and in the system they can go in and they can actually assign it to their employees. The second part is the content. When we were deciding what we wanted to do with our content, one of the key decisions in that is we needed to make sure that the contingent workers who didn't have access to the network could get to the content. One of the biggest benefits of SuccessFactors is that they did offer the iContent option where we could put our content on their server. They could set it up with Akamai so that all the restrictions were there that we needed, and our contingent workers could now access the training they needed in the corporate learning management system. The workaround systems that were out there and multiple versions of the same course where potentially we were out of compliance because this system had revision 2 and this system had revision 3. Now everybody's taking the same training from the same server from the same learning management system. And then the last piece was export control compliance. As Westinghouse is growing into the global marketplace, one of the big things that is driving all the decisions we make with our technology is export control. There are certain countries that we cannot share nuclear technology information with, and we had to make sure when we set the system up that these individuals didn't have access to the content that they weren't supposed to. One of the ways we did that was with iContent and putting that content on a restricted server so that individuals sitting in an export control country can't even access anything that sits on that server. The other thing we're doing as a second layer is we created domains based on an individual's location. So all of our domains in SuccessFactors are set up based on where you actually are working. We then have catalogs set up, and the content in those catalogs is assigned to the domains where the individuals are allowed to see them. We have one all Westinghouse catalog that's assigned to everybody in the system, and then we have two separate restricted catalogs, and those catalogs are only assigned to the United States domain as well as a few of the countries in Europe. And so only Westinghouse employees and contractors that sit in those countries, which essentially roll up to those domains, have access to that content. So we actually have a dual level of control around our content, which puts us in a really, really good place at that point. So those are some of the big project decisions we had to make and some of the wins that really made moving to SuccessFactors a smart choice and the right choice for Westinghouse at the time that we were doing it. With the project, though, we did have some lessons learned along the way that I would encourage you to really take these to heart if you're implementing a learning management system. The first one is to always start with project team orientation training. One of the things that we did because of the very short time frame or crunch that we were under to get the learning management system implemented was we jumped right into making configuration decisions after a short demonstration. If I had to do it again, I would go back and I would take a week and make sure that everybody in the team understood exactly how the system worked out of the box. And then we could have made decisions based on that. I think we would have done things a little bit differently in some of the areas. We've corrected most of those, but we could have saved time up front had we thought through them, fully understanding the capabilities of the system. So take the time up front, understand the system before you make any decisions on how you want to set it up. The next one is communicate business process changes early. Do not underestimate your end users and the power of this change. A lot of people, like Westinghouse did, make the assumption that we're just changing systems. Our end users change systems every day. They figure it out on their own out in the public. You know, Google changes how you navigate, and they figure it out on their own. You're going to have a lot of changes here, and they need to understand what those changes are without assuming that they'll just adapt to those changes. One of our big changes was with the matrices. You know, we knew that in the end it was going to be a big win for the company. So what we did is, you know, we waited until it was time to start rolling it out, and we communicated this great thing called curriculum and how it was going to save time. The managers panicked a little bit at that time because they weren't ready for it. Had we given them a few months to prepare for it, they would have seen the value. And we're getting feedback now that it's out there that they really do like it. But we should have started earlier. The next one is don't underestimate the power of a demonstration. End users want to see what's changing. They want to feel comfortable with it. They want to know how it's different than what they have today. Even if it's an easy-to-use system like SuccessFactors, they still want to see it. And then the last one is develop a project terminology handbook. Like I said before, we used SAP LSO, and there's some key terminology that SAP uses, like D numbers and E numbers and qualification numbers. And we jumped right into making some decisions without really mapping the SAP terminology to the SuccessFactors terminology. And I would say probably 2 months into it, individuals were still struggling with what a curriculum was versus what an item was. So I think that terminology handbook to understand exactly what the terminology is and how it relates back to what you have today if you are replacing something is really a big help. So the key here is anticipate all the areas impacted early and definitely plan for them. Don't just jump into it. So with that, we'll take some time and look at the system itself and how those project wins and decisions all look based on how Westinghouse decided to set it up. So the first thing we're going to look at is a learning plan from the user's perspective. When you look at the snapshot of the learning, you can see on the left-hand side that there is an overdue section, a due within a week, and a due later. One of the things we didn't have in the past was the ability to assign learning, let alone say when it was due. Now we can actually set due dates for training for new hires. In the all-employee curriculum, it says once this is assigned to you, you have 30 days to take this training, 60 days to take that training, and 90 days to take the other training. The employees really appreciate that because it helps them to, especially as a new hire, because they do get a lot of it there. And they also have a quick snapshot of, what's coming up. Over on the right are some easy links. Some of those are defaults. We use that box to actually link out to some of our development program websites, which is great because they have to take the training in the system, but if they have questions about it, they can link right to the website to get the detailed information. And then in the bottom is just that quick snapshot of their status. Do they have any curricula that are overdue, which you can see in the screenshot? I do and should get to my training. Have they completed any work in the last 30 days? So from the learning plan, if I click on the curriculum box, it takes me to the curriculum details. This really is a key benefit for our employees because when you click on the curriculum details and you click on a curriculum that you want the details about, this is the information that you get. You can see whether the curriculum is complete or not as an employee. You can see if I have anything that's due. You can see in here that there's a couple courses that are still due in this curriculum. And you can also see what's complete with the green check mark. So if I have a curriculum assigned to me that has 30 courses in it and it says that it's incomplete, I can easily go in and see what I still have to take and what I've already completed. We send out a lot of communications that say this is due next week, and employees are like, oh, have I taken it or not? So this is that nice quick snapshot for them to be able to see that. From the curriculum details, then we go to the manager side. So we have the employee side, which is great. The manager side is brand new to us. We didn't have a manager portal in the past, and here managers have access to employee information in a snapshot. And what you're looking at now down at the bottom where it says My Employees is a quick snapshot into their employees' training to see if they have employees with anything overdue, due coming up in a week, or what they have that's on time. If they click on the My Employees, it takes them to their portal. And in their portal, on the next slide, you'll see some of the links that they have access to. And this is some of the functionality that I talked about before with the big wins for us. They can now assign or remove learning from their employees. So one of Westinghouse's global policies is that managers are required to create a training plan for their employees. That's what they're doing the curriculum for. That is their training plan. They can assign the curriculum to their employees right from here then, rather than relying on the employees going out and finding it themselves. They can register or withdraw employees in any of the scheduled offerings. We have a lot of field service workers. So if they have somebody that's out in the field that really needs to take a course and doesn't have access to a computer to register, they can do it for them. Approvals, one of the things that management has been asking for years is because of the way we do training chargebacks and that money hits their budget, they would like to be able to approve those courses before their employees register. So we're in the process of setting some of our courses up with the higher end fees or that maybe go a week where the employee is going to be out of the office and the manager wants to be able to approve that, we're setting it up so the manager can approve those courses before the employee can register. I'm going to jump down to reports, and then we're going to go back to dashboards in a minute. So with reports, they now have access to run the curriculum report to see what their employees have completed and not completed in the group curriculum they created. That's from a report perspective. The dashboard, though, on the next slide is really key in what they're going to look at. The dashboard shows what's been assigned to their employees that the employee still needs to take. And you can see on here in red, some of the items are overdue that their employees need to take. And then if it's in black, then it's not overdue yet. But the manager can ping their employee directly from here to say, hey, you have these 3 courses. Can you please make sure you set time aside this week and take those? So that's the dashboard. And with the dashboard, there's no need for the training matrix. Really what the training matrix was to figure out what their employees needed to take that was required of them. By looking at the dashboard, they have all of that in one quick snapshot without having to run multiple reports and putting an Excel macro out there. So the question is, where do we go from here? What's next is JAM. We have purchased the license for JAM. We just haven't implemented it yet. But like Paul had talked about before, blended learning really is the key to the future of learning success. So we're going to look at how we can implement JAM moving forward with some of our courses. We want to be able to integrate the performance module and the learning module so that if one of my performance competencies that I need training around or development around is out there that can help me develop with customer focus. And then the last part, and this is going to be the biggest one, is career development. We also have the career development module, but we don't have the HR stuff set up yet to implement that. But that is our long-term goal, and why we want SuccessFactors is really to be able to implement all of it together into one piece so that we have succession, performance, learning, all in there with career development. So some of the key success factors in our project when we look back are listed. I'm not going to read them all to you, but if you look at the first one, prepare your IT and legal organization. You are going to make a lot of data available with the cloud solution to a lot of people who may not have had it before. You need to make sure legal is involved in how you set the system up. If you're going with iContent, they need to be involved in, where that content can reside and not reside on the iContent servers. Involved early, so when we were ready to start bringing the data over and flip that switch, we were good to go. Our IT department was completely prepared for that and ready to go. They knew exactly what was coming. And the other one that sticks out when I look at this is to work with the various locations. Because we are a global organization, all of the countries have very specific requirements due to government regulations and whatever else it might be that drives them. So one of the success factors is our project team actually had somebody from every location or every country that we were in to provide input into how to set the system up, what configuration decisions to make, and when we rolled it out, the system actually meets the needs of all of the various countries. And we're still working through modifying some of this stuff so that everybody can use it like reports, but the system itself at this point meets all of the needs of all of the locations. And that was one of the biggest things, because when we started this, like I said, we had 6 different learning management systems. We are now down to 1 corporate learning management system. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Paul.